The night my life ended didn't look like the kind of moment people remember. There were no raised voices at first. No chaos. No warning that anything was about to collapse. It started quietly, in a room full of people I had known my entire life. People who had watched me grow up, who had trusted me without question, who had never once looked at me with doubt. And then, in less than a few minutes, that trust disappeared completely. Not slowly. Not with hesitation. All at once, my sister was crying, barely able to speak. Her voice shaking just enough to make everything sound real. Every word landing exactly the way it needed to. She said I had been hurting her for years, that I had threatened her, that I had made sure no one would ever find out. And as she spoke, I watched something shift in the room. Faces changed. Expressions hardened. People who had always known me suddenly looked at me like they were seeing someone else entirely. I tried to speak, tried to stop it before it went any further. But it didn't matter. No one was listening. Because the moment they chose to believe her, I stopped being who I was to them. I became something else. Something they didn't need to question. Something they could hate without hesitation. And the worst part wasn't the accusation. It was how easy it was for them to believe it. Before that night, I believed my life made sense. Not perfect. Not extraordinary. But stable in a way that felt predictable. My parents valued structure. Appearances. The idea that everything should look right from the outside even if it wasn't. And for most of my life, I fit into that structure without questioning it. I did what was expected. I worked hard. Stayed out of serious trouble. Built something for myself that I thought they could be proud of. And for a while, I believed they were. Then my sister came into our lives. And things shifted in ways that didn't seem important at first. She was younger, adopted, and fragile in a way that made everyone treat her differently. She needed more attention, more protection, more understanding, and I adjusted. That's what I always did. I adjusted to whatever the family needed me to be. The reliable one, the stable one, the one who didn't create problems. But over time, those small differences started to mean something else. The way my parents listened to her first, the way her emotions carried more weight than facts, the way she could change a story just enough to make herself the center of it without anyone questioning it. I noticed it, but I ignored it. Because it was easier to believe we were still a normal family than to admit something was off. Looking back, the signs were always there. Not obvious, not dramatic, just consistent. A pattern of who was believed, who was protected, and who was expected to understand. And I was always the one expected to understand. The moment it happened, it didn't feel real. Not in the way people describe shock, where everything slows down or becomes distant. It felt sharp, immediate, like every word was cutting through me before I had time to understand it. 1 second I was standing there, trying to figure out why the room felt tense. And the next I was being described as something I couldn't even process. My sister's voice was breaking, but not enough to lose control. Just enough to make every sentence sound believable. She said it had been happening for years, that I had gone into her room at night, that I had threatened her to keep quiet. And as she spoke, I watched everyone around me change in real time. Faces that had always been familiar turned into something else. Not confusion. Not hesitation. Certainty. I tried to speak. Tried to interrupt. But it didn't matter. My words didn't land. They didn't even register. Because in that moment, the truth wasn't something anyone was looking for. They had already found something easier to believe. My father stepped forward before I could say anything else. He didn't ask me if it was true. He didn't give me a chance to explain. He just hit me. Hard enough to drop me to the floor. Hard enough that I tasted blood before I even realized what had happened. And no one stopped him. No one questioned it. Because to them, It made sense. I remember looking up from the ground, trying to find at least one person who wasn't convinced, one face that still saw me the way they had before. There wasn't one. Not a single person in that room hesitated. And if you've ever been in a moment where everything you are gets replaced by something you didn't do, you already know what that feels like. Not anger. Not fear. Something emptier than that. Something final. If you've ever realized that people can decide who you are without ever hearing your side, you already know that's the moment you stop existing to them. They didn't just throw me out of the house. They erased me. My father took everything that connected me to them without hesitation. Cards, insurance, anything with his name on it. Like cutting off access was the same as cutting me out completely. My mother had already packed my things into bags before I even understood what was happening. Like she had been preparing for this moment longer than I realized. And then the door closed behind me. And just like that, I didn't have a home anymore. The first night, I sat in my truck, parked in a place that felt far enough away that no one would recognize me, trying to replay everything in my head like I could find the moment where it all made sense. There wasn't one. The next few days blurred together. Calls unanswered. Messages ignored. People who used to know me suddenly acting like I didn't exist, or worse. Like they knew something about me. I didn't even understand myself. The story spread faster than I could react to it. Not the truth. Something cleaner. Easier. Something that fit what people already wanted to believe. I saw it in the way conversations stopped when I walked into a room. In the way people avoided eye contact. In the way distance replaced familiarity overnight. Jobs became harder to keep. Places became harder to stay. Nights became longer. Color. Quieter. There's a point where survival stops feeling like living and starts feeling like waiting. Waiting for something to change. Or for something to end. I reached that point standing on a bridge, looking down into water that felt far enough away to disappear into. No noise. No voices. Just silence and the weight of everything I had lost pressing down in a way I couldn't carry anymore. The only reason I didn't jump was because someone spoke. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just enough to cut through the silence I had been standing in. I remember tightening my grip on the railing. My body frozen between falling and stepping back. And hearing a voice behind me that didn't sound afraid. Didn't sound shocked. Just present. He didn't rush toward me. Didn't grab me. Didn't try to stop me the way people usually imagine. He just stood there and spoke like I was still someone worth talking to. I don't know why I answered him. Maybe because he didn't treat me like I was broken. Or dangerous. Or already gone. Maybe because he was the first person in years who hadn't already decided who I was before I said anything. I told him everything. Not to defend myself. Not to convince him. Just because I needed to hear it out loud. I needed to know it still existed somewhere outside my head. And when I finished, he didn't react the way I expected. No judgment. No pity. Just a quiet understanding. Like he had seen something like this before and knew it didn't end the way I thought it would. That night didn't fix anything. It didn't erase what happened. Didn't give me back what I lost. But it stopped something worse. It gave me one reason to step back instead of forward. And from there, things didn't suddenly get better. They changed slowly. Almost painfully. Work came first. Structure. And routine. Something to hold on to when everything else felt unstable. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into something that felt like progress. The pain didn't disappear. But it shifted into something I could carry without breaking. And for the first time since everything collapsed, I wasn't waiting for my life to end. I was building something new. Something that didn't depend on anyone who could take it away. Years passed before I heard from them again. Long enough that my old life felt like something that had happened to someone else. I had rebuilt everything from nothing. Piece by piece. Without them. Without anyone who had turned their back on me that night. So when my phone rang, and I heard my mother's voice for the first time in years. I didn't feel relief. I felt distance. She didn't waste time. She told me my sister had confessed, that everything she said that night was a lie. 7 years of silence reduced to a single sentence. I didn't respond. I just listened. Because hearing it didn't change anything. It didn't give me back what I lost. It didn't undo the nights. The fear. The years of being treated like something I wasn't. When I agreed to meet them, it wasn't for closure. It was to see what was left. They looked different. Smaller. Like time had taken something from them the way they had taken something from me. My sister couldn't look at me. My parents couldn't hold eye contact. And when they finally spoke, it wasn't about what they had done. It was about what they needed. Money. A way out of the consequences they had created. I let them talk. I didn't interrupt. I didn't react. Because for the first time, I understood something clearly. They hadn't come back because they believed me. They came back because they needed me. And that changed everything. When I stood up to leave, my mother asked what they could do to fix it. I looked at her. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Just clarity. Nothing. Because some things don't get fixed. They just end. And as I walked away, I didn't feel like I had won. I felt like I had finally let go. If you've ever been destroyed by people who were supposed to protect you, you already know sometimes the only justice is walking away and never looking back.